culture. So I'm going to pray for you real quick. God, thank you so much. Thank you for allowing us to worship tonight. Thank you for everyone in this room. God, I just want you to bless everyone in this room right now. Open our hearts, our minds to you, Lord, and speak through Amy tonight. Say so in you. Amen.
You can clap for CJ. That was really good. All right. Well, thanks, you guys. I'm really excited. My picture is very big up on the screen. Oh, okay, there we go. Oh man, that sucks. Just pause it. Just do what you can. Give it up for Jess, you guys. Every week, like, something falls apart in our technology system, and she does a really great job of handling that on the spot. So I feel like if you've never been in a position where you're like sitting literally in front of everyone and having to deal with technology falling apart at your fingers, just know it's stressful. So you're doing a great job, Jess. Love you. So anyways, like I said, my name is Amy. I am the team leader here in InterVarsity. So I'm on staff here. I graduated from NAU a few years ago. Go, Jack. Sorry. I love NAU. I really do. I graduated. Did you say boo? Oh, okay. I graduated a few years ago, like I said, with a degree in choral music education. So I was a music major. Woohoo, go music majors. Instead of pursuing that career, going into music education, I decided to come on staff at InterVarsity, and I really love it. I've been on staff for a few years. I work with a really amazing staff team. So I have there it is. Oh my gosh, we're so big. There. So this is our staff team. Hopefully you've had the chance to meet some of us, or all of us by now. We have Gabby. She got to speak last week in Kai Bag Room. And Cosmo. He's on staff with our Love Faith chapter. He's also my husband, so I like him a lot. But I also like him. Before we get started, I just want to kind of brag on them for a little bit because they're really great. I also live with both of them. I mean, it makes sense I live with Cosmo because we're married, but I also live with Gabby, and it's really fun, and I really love it. I don't get the chance also very often to have a microphone in front of me and get to brag about my favorite people, so I'm going to do that for a second. Gabby is amazing. We're very similar. We both really love cats. We also really love alone time. And sometimes we like to have our alone time together with our cats. What I really love about Gabby is how much wisdom she brings to leading a Bible study. If you've ever gotten to be in Bible study with her, it's really amazing. I also really love that she has this passion for giving a voice back to communities of people that sort of don't have a voice in larger society and even in Christian communities. And I just think that's really cool that she's passionate about that. It's really awesome. She's the best. Next time you see her, now you know what she looks like. Make sure you give her a high five, not a hug, but a high five, and tell her she's really great and buy her stuff and just maybe another cat. We accept. Same with Cosmo. I also really love him. This summer we celebrated our 3-year wedding anniversary. Next weekend we get to celebrate 9 years of being together. So we've been together a really long time. We started dating in high school back in 2008, and so you guys were mostly in elementary school. That was just really scary but funny to me also. Cosmo is really awesome. If you've gotten a chance to get to know him, if you haven't yet, do it because he's so much fun. He is the sort of unique thing that he brings to our staff team is that he's a raging extrovert. And so whenever he has free time or whatever, and also because it's his job, he loves to be on campus hanging out with you guys. Whenever he's not, he wishes that he is. And so it's just funny. But he really loves people. I think something that's really awesome about Cosmo is that it takes him 2 seconds to consider you his friend, his best friend in the world. And once you're his friend, which doesn't take much, like I said, you will have the biggest fan forever. You're like set. He just really loves advocating for people. So like, you just say hi to him, and he's gonna come home and tell me, Amy, I made a new best friend today, and he's gonna be your biggest fan. So that's pretty great. I also just love that I get to work with my husband. Like, not a lot of people get to do that, but it's really fun to be on a staff team. So anyways, here's our staff team. I love them. Get to know us. We want to meet you guys. We want to know you guys. So buy them nice things. You know, they deserve it. So tonight I'm going to be continuing our series. We've been talking about so far in InterVarsity. Oh, it's kind of pixely, but can you see this? It's a little, okay. So this is our purpose statement in InterVarsity. So hopefully you can read it. To establish and advance at colleges and universities, witnessing communities of students and faculty who follow Jesus as Savior and Lord, growing in love for God, God's Word, God's people of every ethnicity and culture, and God's purposes in the world. My head's kind of blocking that. But so far we've been kind of going through these like love things at the end. We've talked about growing in love for God, God's Word, and tonight I'm going to be talking about growing in love for God's people. I said that really fast. I'm going to take a deep breath. So I'm really excited. It's just fun that I get this topic because I got to spend 6 weeks this summer in China. Heyo! And there's a lot of people in the room actually that came with me. So there's a picture of our team. Here we are. It was so much fun. This is our like little NAU squad, but we joined up with students and staff from several other schools around the country. You can kind of pick them out in this picture. This is our last day there. It was so much fun, you guys. It was really cool because we got to do this like cultural exchange type thing. So we were on a university campus the whole time we were there, and we got to like take turns teaching Chinese students about American culture, and then they would teach us about Chinese culture, and just like building relationships with them. It was so fun. So it just like makes sense to my talk tonight. I got to learn a lot about Chinese culture, which is incredible and beautiful and really neat. So I have a little story to tell about our first day there, or our first day teaching. So we like get this schedule. So as a staff on the trip, we like received the class schedule like several weeks in advance, and we were kind of getting our classes ready because we were teaching a lot, especially as staff. So our first day of classes, Cosmo and I were going to teach together. We have this whole like thing ready to go. We woke up early that morning, and we we wake up and we go, and our hosts come and find us. They're going to bring us to our classroom. And my first like inkling that something is gonna be different than what I expected is they separate us from everyone else. So like all our friends like going to the classroom buildings, and they take us somewhere else. And we're like, where are we going? What's going on? But we just follow them. So they take us to this like tea room, and it's this really beautiful, kind of like a coffee shop, but for tea. And we're in there, and we're like, okay, this is not like the classroom that we had expected, but that's fine, it's cool, we can make this work. But it was like really awkward. We didn't really know what to do to like start. We weren't sure if someone was gonna say something or if we were just supposed to like jump in. You know, these are all strangers. And so we just kind of like wait for something to happen. And then all of a sudden, this girl gets up and she's like, okay, it's time for my formal presentation on Chinese tea culture. I'm gonna teach you all about tea. We're like, cool, that sounds fun. So we're like, okay, I guess maybe they're teaching first. We sort of thought like we were supposed to teach the whole time, but we weren't about to like interrupt her. So like, okay, cool. So they do this whole presentation on tea. We get to try this different kinds of tea. It's really cool. And then when that's done, Cosmo and I sort of get ready again. We're like, okay, here we go. Now we just go up there, I guess. We just do it. And then someone else gets up and they're like, now it's time for our presentation on Chinese Tai Chi. We're like, okay, cool. So they teach us some Tai Chi. We get to learn some moves. It's kind of awkward because we are really bad at it, but we just go with it. And at this point, the other people on our teams, like Audrey was there with me, if you guys know Audrey, they're kind of like looking at us like, what's going on? We thought you were supposed to be teaching, and we're like, I don't know, we're just going with it. So anyways, this continues on for several more presentations. We we get to learn about all kinds of things, and it's really fun. I mean, it's really fascinating. We're learning all kinds of stuff. We get to like try out ancient musical instruments that are from China. They teach us about calligraphy and etiquette and traditional clothes from different dynasties and all these different things. It's really incredible. The whole time, I'm sort of panicking because I'm like, I have no idea what is going on. We don't know how long it's going to go. So it went for 4 hours, and we, on our little class schedule, it says we're going to be in there for an hour and a half. And it also says that we have a second class that's somewhere else that we are also supposed to be teaching, like in that same time frame. And so I'm watching the time go, and I'm like, we're supposed to be somewhere else, 10 minutes ago. I'm like, here in America we value time a lot, so I knew this. I know that I'm from like a time-oriented culture, but we just don't know what we're doing. So anyways, it was a really fun morning, just kind of going with the flow, learning to let go of control of the situation. We learned a ton about China. I loved it. We also have this really fun picture that I get to show you.
Yes! Yeah!
We got to try on the traditional Han Dynasty clothes. You can see us looking. So, it was really fun. So, anyways, I loved our time in China. I got to learn so much about the culture there that's really incredible. If that sounds interesting to you, we go every summer. So you should go to China.
It's awesome. If you want to.
It's not free, but just talk to me about it later. Okay. So anyways, like I said, a few weeks ago, Stephen Grauman was our sort of guest speaker, kicked us off. He talked about growing in love for God, and he used this passage from Mark about growing in love, or falling in love, learning to love God with all of our minds and our hearts and our strengths. And tonight I'm actually going to use the same passage, but I'm going to be looking at it from a different book, from the book of Matthew, and I'm going to he kind of like shortened it and abbreviated it. I'm going to look at the whole section. So let me pray, and I'll get our scripture started tonight. Lord, may the meditations of my heart and the words on my lips be acceptable and pleasing to you, O God, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Alright, so let's read this together. An expert in the law tested Jesus with this question. Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law? And Jesus replied, love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment, and the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. So, we're going to be focusing on the love your neighbor part. That's sort of the part that Stephen didn't talk about a few weeks ago. It's not really that crazy of a concept, right? It's pretty familiar to us. Even if you've never read the Bible or been around Christians much, you've probably heard this before. Or another way we like to put it is treat people like you would want to be treated. Some people call it the golden commandment or the golden rule. It's like a pretty familiar thing, I'd say, and at least here. And it's pretty crazy that Jesus just says this thing at the end, all the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments. So that's the Old Testament, which at this point, that's the whole Bible to them, right? This is written later. We are reading it, but at this point, Jesus is the whole Bible, you can sum it up to these two things. Love God and love people. Love your neighbor as yourself. It's not a huge jump. What we've been talking about in large group so far, loving God, loving His Word. I think loving His people kind of is a natural response to that as well. They go hand in hand. Tonight, I want to go a little further than just loving people and treating people like you want to be treated. I could give a talk about being kind and treating people with respect and stuff, but I just feel we probably know that already. Be nice to people. Be kind. You can do that. That's not that hard. So tonight I'm going to be talking about growing love for people of every ethnicity and culture. And so that part's really important. I know that we can get a little squirmy and we can get a little uncomfortable when people start talking about ethnicity. Like, for whatever reason, we can just get weird about that, and that's okay. But I really think that's the best part of this. In InterVarsity, you'll find we sort of like to go after the things that make people uncomfortable, not in like a weird way or a bad way, but we just like to go deeper. We're willing to ask the hard questions. We're willing to engage in difficult conversations and press through those things because it's worth it. It's important and it's worth it. So. Also, some things that that make me excited to give this talk tonight is because I've been around college students now for a long time because I did college and then I've sort of stuck around. I'm like still here. Someone earlier tonight was like, "You graduated again?" Or like, "You're still in school or something?" And I'm not still in school, but I'm still here with you guys. Something that I've noticed about this like new wave of students the last few years is that one, you guys are really great. So a little shout out to my Calderon people. I see you guys. So you guys are awesome. Something I've noticed about this sort of generation of students in general is that you're really committed to trying to understand each other in a deeper way. Like you're not satisfied with superficial relationships with one another. You want that deep community. You want that authenticity in relationship. And so I think we can handle talking about something like ethnicity tonight, and I think it's going to be okay. So I'm really excited. I think you guys can handle it. I don't know if I can handle it, but I think you guys can. So anyways, learning to appreciate other cultures and wrestle through the beauty and the brokenness of what it means to have an ethnicity and to understand other people's ethnicities is actually something that sort of shaped my college experience and has really shaped my faith experience as well. So have you ever heard people say, or maybe have you said yourself something like, "Why can't everyone just get along? Like, why is there so much hatred, and why is there so much division, and why are we still fighting all the time? Why are there these protests happening? Like, what's happening? This is 2017, right? People say that all the time. This is 2017. We should have moved past this stuff already." And I think part of the reality is that the division that we're seeing around our country today is not really something new. It may be new to us, but it's not something that's new to our country. And unfortunately, it's a much more complicated issue than something that can be solved by just like hoping and wishing that people will start treating each other the way they want to be treated. Right? If it was that simple, like I feel like we would have figured that out a long time ago, maybe 2,000 years ago when Jesus said this. But we know that it's not that simple, even the most optimistic among us. And the heart of man has just always been plagued by sin and brokenness and division, and racism even is a result of that. So what is the solution? I don't know that I can like offer some sort of quick like band-aid solution to that. I think that the love your neighbor teaching from Jesus, though, is a really good place to start. So I also believe that Jesus wants us to partner with him in bringing restoration to the world, and we as Christians long so much for unity and healing and reconciliation to come. But it's not going to just happen, right? It's not going to happen on accident. It's not going to happen because we do nothing or like, you know, it would have happened so far if that was the case. So, like I said before, something I've noticed about this generation of college students is that like we're not satisfied anymore with like really simple explanations for things or like fluffy answers to really difficult problems in the world. And I think that's really awesome. I think this generation is like really passionate about different issues that are happening in the world and seeking answers to those things. And so we want to see change in the world. We're like tired of seeing these things happening. So my suggestion tonight for kind of a tangible place to start in interpreting Jesus' teaching is growing in love for God's people of every ethnicity and culture. And in order to do this, I think it's time that we sort of let go of this thing from our parents' generation, and that's colorblindness. So, I know, I saw it in the room, I just dropped a thing. Hear me out, okay? I believe that love, like true, deep, sacrificial, Jesus, love your neighbor kind of love, isn't colorblind. I really believe that it can't be. I believe that to grow in love for God's people of every ethnicity and culture, we have to be able to move beyond colorblindness. We have to be able to see and acknowledge people's ethnicities and cultures, right? It's not just you can't pretend it's not there and then grow to love people deeply. So I know that may be really weird to hear or make you uncomfortable to hear, and I want to acknowledge that. That's totally okay. I'm not here to convince you of some radical thing. I just humbly ask that you stay with me, press in, engage. Don't make assumptions about where I'm going to go tonight. I promise I have no evil political agenda or anything. It's okay. I want to show you this video by someone named Sarah Shin. She's kind of a big wig person in InterVarsity. She's written a book recently called Beyond Colorblind. I've gotten to hear her teach a few times, and I think she does a really good job of explaining this, better than I can. So let's see if this video works.
Everyone has an ethnic background.
I'm African American.
I am an Asian American, the daughter of 2 Filipino immigrants.
I'm a white, mostly German American.
I am Mexican American.
I'm a Native American from the Lakota tribe.
The funny thing is, we live in a society that prizes both colorblindness and diversity. Somehow we're supposed to visibly diversify our school and work spheres, and yet act like we're all from the same story. Colorblind diversity often merely means multicolored attendance in the same room. We have not progressed into a post-racial society. We just try to deal with the past by ignoring the scars and assuming, hoping that colorblindness will fix it all. We're also not struggling from a lack of tools. We have plenty of language, programs, and theory, and yet we're still stuck. We need a different way out. As Gandalf says in Lord of the Rings, the only way to get to the other side is through the mountain. Instead of colorblindness, we must choose to be ethnicity aware, to embrace our ethnic backgrounds. To do this, we need help beyond ourselves. So who can we ask? Jesus shows remarkable intentionality as he willingly engages in ethnic differences and tension with the Samaritan woman at the well, or when he tells a story about a Samaritan showing mercy to his ethnic enemy, Israelite. If we want to ask him for help, we need to start with our own ethnicities, our own ethnic stories. Our ethnicities are experienced through our cultural heritage, our racial background, the languages we speak, and the histories of our families and our ethnic communities. When we ask Jesus to redeem our ethnic stories, we're saying, come and enter into this part of my story. Show me what is made beautiful, and show me where you want to heal. We're asking him to amplify how he's made us well, and to excavate the places of brokenness, pain, racism, idolatry, and sin. If we pretend like we're all the same, we're not seeing the beauty of our different cultural expressions. And we're not able to address real cross-cultural conflict and racial pain. We end up becoming bad friends to one another. And we're not able to share the story of Jesus in a compelling manner. So, where do we start? Here's how it works. First, we need to embrace our ethnic backgrounds and ask Jesus to show us how he's made us well in the beauty of our ethnic heritage. Each and every one of us has been made well in the image of God. Some of us will have no trouble thinking of beautiful, distinctive things about our ethnic cultures. And others of us will have a hard time, so we might need to ask, beginning. The shallow thing would be to just celebrate our cultures and not acknowledge the real, hard, broken things that exist in and between our ethnicities. So we can't just stay here. Second, we need to look at and name the places of brokenness, pain, and sin that have affected our personal and collective ethnic journeys, as well as our own people. Sometimes these are idols or things that our cultures worship. Other times these are experiences of prejudice, racism, and injustice that have left deep scars in us. Unattended to, these scars can make it harder and harder for us to love people that look like us and who do not look like us. And thus, we end up causing harm. We need redemption, or else we are going to see cycles of idolatry, sin, and racism repeat themselves and hurt people around us. Jesus does not want to leave us in the broken story. He offers a path to redemption if we accept this help in finding healing for our own ethnic journeys. He wants to affirm the good that He created and intended for each ethnic background. And He wants to excavate and heal the wounds and scars that cause us to suffer and serve as poor neighbors to one another. Another way to put it is that Jesus helps us to become fully who we were meant to be. And He invites us to have our scars transformed by the scars He received on the cross. He enters into the brokenness of our stories with us, and then invites us to rise with Him in His story of new life. He then calls us to live out all of who He has meant us to be, including our ethnic stories. And this is beautiful. But wouldn't it be selfish to just keep that to yourself? He invites us to steward our ethnic stories for His kingdom purposes, to share the story of His healing in our lives with others, to pursue reconciliation with different ethnic groups and people, and to pursue justice in Jesus' name. And He invites us into His communal, global plan of restoration. Instead of ethnicity serving as the confines of how you love others, your ethnic story becomes a thing that helps display the good news of Jesus. In other words, your redeemed ethnic story will become a blessing to the world. Join us for this honest conversation, exploring our ethnicities, beauty, brokenness, redemption, and restoration.
Okay, so Sarah Shin puts it pretty well. I want to tell you a story of me sort of like going through that whole cycle that she talks about through these different circles that I experienced in college. It's kind of like one of the most shaping experiences that I had when I was a student here. This was about 4 or 5 years ago, but I was in this meeting with other leaders in InterVarsity at the time, and we were meeting, I believe it was like in the SBS building or something late on a Sunday night. There was maybe 30 or 40 of us. We had gotten to a point as a team, as sort of the leaders of this fellowship, where we were trying to pursue more diversity. We wanted to see more diversity in places like large group and in our small groups. But we were stuck, and we couldn't quite like figure out what was going on. So we decided to do this like revolutionary thing. We decided we were going to talk, and we were going to listen to each other. That was it. It was this brilliant idea. So our staff worker at the time chose 6 of us in the room. Here we are. This is me as a student, little baby Amy. He chose 6 of us in the room to kind of sit in this like small circle in the classroom. And then everyone else sort of with us, and we called it our fishbowl experiment. So the point was that the 6 of us were gonna just like have this conversation, and everyone else was gonna watch us and just like listen and observe. And it was a little weird at first, not gonna lie, but it was also kind of cool. So I'm gonna introduce everyone in the picture in a second, but basically we each decided, we came up with this list of questions ahead of time, and we just decided we were going to talk and we were going to answer these questions together one at a time. So the questions started pretty simple. We were gonna like talk about what kind of food does your family like to eat? Like what sort of food reminds you of home? And how does your family celebrate different holidays and things like that? And then later we got sort of deeper. But I remember it was really fun to share. These are all my friends, like I already knew them. But it was fun just to hear more about each other and hear these different ways that our families do things. It was fascinating. And then I also remember being really surprised by how different our answers were from each other. I remember being like, oh, I've never thought about that before. I've never thought about how my friends like celebrate holidays is different from mine and different foods and stuff. And going into this, I kind of assumed like, oh, this will be fun. We'll like learn more about each other, but it's not gonna be that big of a deal. Like we're already friends, we already love each other pretty well. I thought, it was just gonna be whatever. So let me introduce you to them before I go on. They're so big from up here, man. Okay, so this is Matt. Oh, thank you, Jess. This is Matt. He is now on staff with InterVarsity as well, actually, in Idaho. He is Polish American, so a lot of his family immigrated from Poland a few generations ago. There's Cosmo next to him. You also get a little baby Cosmo. Cosmo talked about how his family is Greek American, and only a few generations, or Cosmo is second or third generation. So his grandparents immigrated here from Greece, so he talks a lot about that. Melissa, some of you guys know her. She helped start our La Fe chapter actually a few years ago. So Melissa is Mexican American. She talks a lot about that. Andrea in the back is African American. You can kind of see her Black Student Union sweatshirt. She's representing there. There's Jeff. He was our staff worker at the time in the corner. And then Sarah is in the bottom corner. She is biracial, but she's Filipino American as well. So she actually gets to go to the Philippines quite a lot to visit her family too. And then there's me, and I am German American. But my family actually came over on the Mayflower, and so we sort of don't really connect a lot with our like German American identity anymore. But anyway, so this is our group. So we started talking about these things like food and telling each other stories, and we were laughing a lot, and people were paying attention. I don't know. But we started moving to these deeper questions, and I remember, like, now, I feel kind of embarrassed at how surprised I was by how different our stories were and our answers were. And looking back now, I realize that, like, I don't think I realized how much I had chosen to be colorblind at that point in my life. Like, that's what everyone had told me was good, and that was, like, the right way to treat people, and you just like don't talk about these things. It's not important to talk about or to know. I always felt really uncomfortable when anyone would bring up ethnicity. I didn't know my family's story. We didn't really talk about it, and so I kind of would project that on everyone else. Like, well, it's not important to me, so it's probably not important to anyone, and I don't see anything wrong with that. I believed that God was probably colorblind. I mean, He created all people equally, and so I guess I thought that meant we were just all created exactly the same. So looking back, that night was my first sort of experience becoming ethnicity aware, like Sarah Shin says in the video. I was able to learn more about my friends, and our relationships grew in a way that I didn't even know they needed to grow in. I was also able to learn that a lot in China this summer, and everything. So let me tell you about a conversation that really sticks out to me from that night that I remember. We started talking about different experiences that we'd had in college here at NAU that related to our ethnicity. That was like really weird for me to talk about. I didn't really know what to say. But I remember my friend Melissa, she shared this story about how I think it was her roommate at the time, one of her really good friends, one time sort of said, kind of passively, like, oh, Melissa, you're just like white, just like me. And Melissa was like deeply hurt by this. comment. I think she said, like, she knew her friend was trying to be, like, she meant that as a compliment. I think what she was trying to say is, like, we have so much in common, we're the same, you know, we're not that different. But what it meant to Melissa was that her culture and her heritage was just invisible to her friend, that her family's experiences, which were really hard and have been really hard in this country, didn't matter to her friend, that her friend just like didn't want to take the time to get to know who she was fully as a person. And I remember when Melissa was sharing this, I just became really sad. I was like, her best friend doesn't even know her at all, and she's not trying to. You know, that's wrong. That I could feel like how hurt she was and just the pain in her story. And then I realized how hypocritical I was. You know, I had just been thinking that way like an hour before we started this conversation. We're all the same, you know, we're so great, like we love each other so well, we're such good friends already, you know. And so I had to repent in that moment of choosing not to see my friends fully as who they are and who God created them to be. Another story, actually before I move on, I just want to say too, because Melissa started our LaFay chapter here, just a little plug, get to know LaFay, you guys. I don't know if you realize how lucky we are to have them here in our fellowship, but they are awesome. I got to go to their Carne Asada event the other day, and it was amazing. It was really cool. I think, as someone who's not Latina, that I have a lot to learn from that community about hospitality and familia and community, and so I just think it's really cool that we're blessed to have LaFay with us here. So another conversation that I remember having that was really hard for me to hear was Andrea, and she shared about some of the scars, like Sarah Shin is talking about in the video. She said that night that this was the first time she felt like she could really trust like white people in the room. She never had experienced any reason to trust white people in her life, and this night, like sharing with us and being honest with each other and willing to have this like really awkward conversation allowed her to feel like she could trust people that were white. And that was really hard for me to hear. But like, you know, it's not like I can argue with that. Like, that was how she felt, and that was really convicting for me to hear. When we were each sharing about our different, like what we knew about our family's immigration stories, she also shared that it was always just a really frustrating conversation for her to have when people asked her, because that history was robbed from her family. She was descended from slaves in the U.S., and so she didn't know her immigration, like, you know, that's just really uncomfortable to talk about. And we just, like, hearing that, you know, what do you do when you hear that? Like, I just remember our hearts broke for each other, and were opened to one another, I think, for the first time in a way that they hadn't before. And I considered some of these people my best friends in college. This night was really surreal to me. Honestly, I think looking back, it felt like one of the holiest moments I had experienced. I was the worship leader at the time in the fellowship. I spent a lot of time in musical worship, experiencing God's presence, and I think this night I felt like I had experienced God's presence in a new way. I felt like I was able to experience Jesus' grace and the power of his reconciliation and forgiveness on the cross just like meant something new to me. At the end of the night, I mean, we went from laughing with each other about food to crying with each other about the painful experiences our families had had. And I remember at the end, like, no one really knew what to say. We didn't know what to do. So, like, we needed to leave the classroom. And Andrea started singing this old gospel spiritual, "I Need You to Survive." And then we just all started crying all over again. She was singing, "I need you, you need me. We need each other to survive. We're all part of God's body." And that just, like, has always stuck with me. I think the like most important lesson that I learned that night is that we can't be colorblind if we want to love our neighbors and our friends. it just doesn't work. Like Sarah Shin says, we can't have it both ways. We can't have true diversity and community and like the beauty of that if we're not willing to acknowledge what's true about each other. And that can be really hard, but I think that's what Jesus is inviting us to do. Something else that I learned that night is that unity does not equal sameness, right? We just sang this song earlier. We lift up one voice to our God. Unity doesn't mean that we all are exactly the same. That's not unity. That's just being the same. Unity is actually oneness in our diversity. So it's like reconciled diversity. We absolutely were created equally. I'm not disputing that. We deserve to be treated equally. Absolutely. That's like one of the most fundamental truths that you can know as a human. But that doesn't mean that that is at the cost of recognizing each other's differences, right? We can all be treated with respect as we should be. That doesn't mean that we are all exactly the same and have the same story. Does that make sense, that distinction? So, I just also believe, and I experienced this in China this summer, that when we're colorblind or when we choose to ignore the things that are different about each other, we miss out on so much. Our friendships suffer. We can't really fully love each other in a deep way. We miss out also on learning who God is. Like Micah was saying earlier, the fact that we were all made in His image and that we're different means that there are lots of different things about God, that different cultures can reflect different aspects of Him. In China, I got to see how important honor is and respect and showing honor to guests. And I just think that reflects a part of God's heart that I don't often see here in the States, or that I see in a different way. Hanging out with LaFay shows me that God cares about family, and He cares about community, and He cares about being there for one another. Like, you know what I mean? So when we choose to be colorblind, we're not only missing out on friendships and deeper levels of relationship with each other, I think we're also missing out on a lot to be learned about God. I know it's going to be hard to talk about, and so if you have a lot of questions, or if you're still feeling a little dissonance with what I'm saying, that's totally okay. I would love to talk about this with you more. Like, please feel free to come and ask me questions. We can get together another time. Same with the staff and other people in this room. I want you to know that this is like a dialogue. I'm not just like talking at you and saying these things to you. I'm about to wrap up, but I want to also add a little bit more biblical perspective, so you know I'm not just like crazy, and InterVarsity isn't just like crazy or whatever. So this is something that I learned recently, and it has just like blown my mind. So I'm going to share this with you. The book of Revelation, so it's the last book in the Bible, right? Is all about this like prophetic vision and image of what heaven will be like, what the new Jerusalem will be like. And something that I hadn't really noticed before until recently is that ethnicity is actually mentioned several times in the book of Revelation. So you'll read things like every tribe, every language, every nation is gathered worshiping God and things like that. And that's actually the only description about people that is left in Revelation. So like we don't know, I mean, people like to theorize about like what will our bodies look like, and will we have gender and marriage and all this stuff. I don't know the answer to that. I do know about marriage though. Jesus specifically says marriage doesn't exist in heaven. So I just think like the fact that ethnicity outlasts marriage in heaven is like crazy. That like does that blow your mind? That blows my mind. Because I feel like we don't talk about ethnicity very much, and we talk about marriage like so much. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't. It's important to think about, you know, if you want to get married, like who you're going to marry and stuff. That's great. I love being married. We're doing a whole series later this semester actually, about relationships. So I'm not trying to say like we shouldn't value talking about that. But I just think it's crazy, and it has to mean something. That ethnicity, every tribe, nation, tongue is mentioned like several times. And something that we value and talk about all the time, like marriage, is not. So that just has to tell us something about like our priorities and what matters to God. I also think that if you kind of use logic, like it also means that it's not bad, right? Because nothing bad exists in heaven. Like there's no more suffering, no more sorrow, no more tears, no more division. And so I just believe that if something like that still exists, that means it can't be bad. Like, that doesn't seem like crazy logic, right? To me, at least. So, anyways, I'm not making this up. Like, go home, look up verses in Revelation if you don't believe me. We can talk about it. I'd love to talk more about it. So, anyways, there's tons of stories in Scripture that shows Jesus' heart for loving our neighbor and loving people that are different than us. Sarah Shin mentions the Good Samaritan story, the woman at the well. Jesus uses lots of parables to talk about loving people and praying for your enemies and all this kind of stuff. And so I just think we can't ignore that any longer. If we want to be able to grow in our ability to love people, even in this very room, and the thousands of people that are on our campus, like, we can't be colorblind anymore. So I've given you a lot to think about, and I have, worship team, you can sort of start making your way back up here. I have a few invitations to sort of leave you with tonight. One is to pursue meaningful cross-cultural relationships with each other on campus. So just like unity and all those other great things, that doesn't just happen on accident. It unfortunately often doesn't happen like naturally or intuitively. It actually takes a lot of effort. And I also want to encourage you to pursue relationships with people that are different than you in other ways too, like politically, from different places than you, from different countries. NAU has 1,200 international students on our campus. And you guys, they are here and they are desperate to be your friends. And they just want to be seen. In China this summer, we met this student who is named Jack. And he had been studying in the U.S. for 3 years and had never he had never made an American friend until he met us this summer in his own home country. And that is wrong. So find the international students on our campus, invite them into your lives, show them how to make American food. They're probably not going to like it, but that's okay. That's like a very real thing that we can fix on our campus, is international students finding American friends. Second, I want to encourage you to come with us to fall conference. That may sound like totally unrelated to everything I just talked about, but it's not. It's a great opportunity to come and get to know people that are different than you in a deeper way than you would like on a normal day on campus. You get to have pillow talk and hang out late at night and s'mores and hang out and experience the awesome things JC was talking about earlier. So I really want to encourage you to come with us to fall conference. Let me pray to sort of close us, and we're going to end in worship. Lord, I pray that we in InterVarsity can be known as people that love your people of every ethnicity and culture. God, I know that that's your desire for Christians just as a whole, to be known by our love for people. And I know we've just not done a great job of that in the past. Lord, I pray that we would have the courage and also the humility to move past concepts like colorblindness that have not been a solution in our society today. Lord, I pray that we would have the courage to have uncomfortable conversations. God, would you draw us into deeper relationships with one another? God, would you draw us into deeper relationship with you? And would you help us as a community to grow in love for your people? And to be people that are marked by love that's risky and scary and sacrificial. Jesus, we love you, and we thank you for what you've been doing so far this semester in our community. We pray this in your name, Lord. Amen.